The teachings of spiritually based martial arts, my own included, don't begin with deep philosophy or spiritual enlightenment. For one, if we want to feel happy and content, we need to be healthy and comfortable in our own skin. This lays the groundwork for a stronger spirit and, more importantly, boosts our self-esteem. And here's the twist. As we work on our physical health, we're also nurturing a healthier, more resilient mind. This, in turn, helps us appreciate ourselves more, and ultimately builds our self-awareness with mental strength. It's like a domino effect. Once we start making these changes, we can begin to shift spiritually and mentally. All these transformations can lead to improvements in both our personal lives and our careers. That's why my martial arts spirituality revolves around the human mind. For ages, countless nuggets of wisdom have been unearthed about how to strengthen our consciousness. Today, I want to share some of this ancient wisdom that's still relevant and useful in our fast-paced modern world. At its core, it's a simple idea. The stronger our mind, the more we can achieve and become. In this video, and in the other longer one that will follow, I'll break down the essential parts of this mental approach across several chapters. Now, let's get something straight. Just like you have to mend and heal your body first, you also need to do the same for your mind. And here let's be real. No matter how you see yourself, there's a good chance your mind is a bit sick and weak. But don't get it twisted. When I say sick mind, I'm not talking about clinical diagnoses from psychiatry. Instead, we need to look at ourselves through a more spiritual lens. And here, I bet, as you listen to me right now, your mind is weighed down by all sorts of negativity. And honestly, none of us can be blamed. Living in a consumer-driven, materialistic society, we've been conditioned to believe that everything around us is crucial to our happiness. From a young age, we're taught that only by acquiring more will we become the due and proper kind of person. But think about it. If the roots of a tree are poisoned, in this case, our society, that tree will inevitably grow sick and twisted, just like us, the everyday folks. I bring this up because even though you might be following society's rules and moral standards, you're probably not feeling as happy or fulfilled as you'd like. Instead, you might feel a nagging sense of dissatisfaction or frustration with life. Sometimes, you might even find yourself labeled as negative or overly critical. All of this can weaken not just your mind, but your body too. And when both your mind and body are feeling fragile, you become more vulnerable to mental and physical challenges or issues. It's logical. If we're surrounded by negative thoughts and feelings, living in a space that feels heavy, hanging out with negative people, and adhering to negative values, it's only natural that we'd start to view negativity as the norm, even as something acceptable. And we don't need to be a genius to realize that we can't expect anything beautiful or positive to blossom in such a toxic environment. But don't panic just yet. Let's flip the script and look at this from a different angle. Logic tells us that if we can swap out all those negative elements for positive ones, something new and better should emerge. This something new could lead to greater happiness and satisfaction in our lives. It's based on the simple idea that when there's an imbalance on one side, introducing the opposite can create harmony. Let me share an example to clarify what I mean with this allegory. Picture this. On one side of a scale, we have a heavy load of iron. This represents all the negativity we hold onto and live by. On the other side, we have just a few pounds of feathers, which symbolize the positive values we believe in and strive for. Naturally, the scale tips heavily toward the iron side, showing that we often see life as filled with unhappiness, frustration, and disappointment. If we want to shift things for the better, we need to find a way to balance the scale. Logically, that means we need to either add something substantial to the feather side or remove some of the weight from the iron side. In theory, this should create a balance, leading to a brighter outlook on life and, ultimately, more happiness. But here's the catch. Two things are crucial for making this shift happen. First, We have to let go of the misconception that a ton of feathers can never weigh as much as a ton of iron. In other words, we need to clear our minds of prejudices, fears, worries, insecurities, and doubts. Second, we need to practice patience and consistency, because it takes time to gather a ton of feathers. And let's be honest, our patience will be tested. While it only takes one piece of iron to tip the scale, we need millions of feathers to create that positive weight. This translates to real life as well. Just one negative experience can overshadow hundreds of positive moments. That's why we must be mindful of our actions, because one negative deed can erase a lot of good. So, based on this allegory, let's take a look at our lives from this perspective. If we have a negative self-image and want to change that, or if we're looking to heal our minds, we need to start thinking and acting positively. However, when I say live positively, I'm not talking about some mystical notion of positive energy or religious dogmas about love and peace. From my experience with martial arts and spirituality, I believe we should rise above the simplistic labels of good and evil, and instead view positivity as what benefits us. Of course, there are fundamental moral and ethical values that we should all follow, like keeping our promises, not killing, stealing, lying, or cheating. Being honest, compassionate, and fair is essential. These values form a solid foundation that will enhance our lives, no matter who we are or what we do. I believe that everyone, in their own way, will naturally respect and adhere to these common human values. But there's more to consider when it comes to positivity in our lives. Sometimes, what society views as bad or wrong might actually bring us personal benefit. For instance, it could help us strengthen our minds, boost our awareness, or improve our character. Remember, each of us has a unique feather bowl of positivity that brings us joy and contentment. So, what does it really mean to fill our lives with positivity? That's something each person needs to figure out for themselves, because it's different for everyone. We have to look beyond society's accepted values, and of course, it can't come from anything truly evil. Fortunately, discovering what brings us positivity isn't as hard as it seems. We all have it within us, we just need to learn how to look in the right direction. And that's where my martial arts spirituality can guide us. The second step on my spiritual journey through martial arts is one of the toughest challenges we can face. Because it's about fear. You know, fear is something that tends to cling to us throughout our lives, often even after we've reached a higher level of awareness or intelligence. So, the first thing we need to do is to stop putting our trust in fear. Because fear is a master deceiver. It never shows us the truth. Wherever fear creeps in, it brings nothing but lies and disillusions. It's important to keep this in mind, especially when we find ourselves in situations where others in society are spreading fear, whether they realize it or not. Even when those fear-mongers are people we care about, like family, friends, or colleagues, or even figures we look up to, such as politicians, scientists, or doctors, we must remember that their words can be steeped in deception. I think you'd agree with me when I say that fear is not a friend, it's something negative. Fear often drags along a whole host of other negative emotions that can lead us to act in ways that harm ourselves, or much worse others. So, it's wise to be cautious about anything that springs from the voice of fear, because, at its core, fear is a liar that can cloud our vision and distort our reality. Now, in the rest of this chapter, let's talk about another aspect of fear. Many people often project their fears onto others, which can spiral into anger or hatred. But here's the kicker. Those negative thoughts we have about someone else often reflect the fear we carry inside us, not the flaws of the other person. So, it's crucial to turn that lens back on ourselves. When we criticize, hate, or ridicule someone, we might just be pointing out qualities we don't want to acknowledge within ourselves. Sometimes, it's just a reminder of parts of us we'd rather forget. Sometimes perhaps it can be also stemming from past experiences, or a cry for help. But fear can also be a mask for ignorance, hypocrisy, or intolerance. As we can see, there's a whole spectrum of reasons why fear exists. But one thing is common. In any situation where we lash out at others, we're really just revealing something about ourselves, acting under the influence of fear. But personally, I don't believe there's anything inherently wrong with feeling fear or anger from time to time. These emotions can be both good and bad. It's hard to classify them. What makes these feelings turn sour is when we let them drive us to unleash negativity onto others, often innocent bystanders. In those moments, we're not thinking clearly, we're acting on impulse. And when we lose control and let fear guide us, our instinct is often to lash out, to hurt others, or to drag them down to our level of pain. And that's why it's crucial to confront and conquer the fear within us. So let's take a stand against fear together, and in doing so, we can find clarity and strength on our spiritual journey. I once wrote that fear has a way of twisting our perception, convincing us to see the world through its distorted lens. But the grip of fear on us wouldn't be nearly as strong if it weren't for another shadow lurking in our society: lies. It's intriguing how we wrap ourselves in a cloak of dishonesty, finding a strange comfort in the fabric of falsehoods. Perhaps it's just part of being human. From a young age, we've been taught to accept what we're given, whether it's words from authority figures, like teachers, governed persons, cultural or religious norms, or even the whispers of family and friends. We've learned to trust these voices, often without question, and as a result, we've mistaken lies for truth. And now, we're bombarded with a constant stream of falsehoods, half-truths, hoaxes, and the ever-present specter of fake news. It's no wonder we've come to see these lies as normal. We've tolerated the deceptions of others so much that we've started to weave our own tales, often lying to those around us and, most importantly, to ourselves. What's even more mind-boggling is how we buy into these lies. Sometimes, we do it intentionally, using deception as a tool to navigate life's challenges. We've found that lying can be a way to shield ourselves from hurt, to gain an advantage, or to cover up our mistakes. It's like we've created a little bubble of self-fulfillment. If we can't achieve something, at least we can talk about it, convincing ourselves, and maybe even those around us. After all, as the saying goes, a lie, told 100 times, becomes the truth. So, here's the crux of it all. Our lives in the world we inhabit can feel like one colossal illusion that we've collectively chosen to believe. That's why a crucial step, not just in this chapter, but in the entire journey of my martial arts spiritual practice, to break free from these lies. We need to stop deceiving not just others, but especially ourselves. You might be thinking, that's easy to say, but it's hard to start, because we don't know what's true and what not. Well, let's start with this. Nearly everything we've believed up until now has been a lie. It's a bold thought, but sometimes recognizing the illusion is the first step toward finding the truth. Not taking things personally can feel like one of the toughest challenges in our quest for mental strength. You know, from a young age, we're taught by our families and society that our personal worth is vital. When we throw in concepts like ego, pride, and haughtiness, it's no wonder that sometimes it feels easier to split an atom than to let go of being touchy. Let me show one example from the life. Imagine a random person who knows little about music. He tells us that our piano playing and singing are awful, even though our music teacher thinks we're doing great. What's fascinating is that many people will accept that harsh critique as the truth, even if deep down they don't believe it, and the facts don't back it up. Now, consider how people respond to this situation. Depending on their personality, they might feel crushed or get defensive. But either way, their reactions aren't truly their own. They're often driven by negativity, which only ends up hurting them more. But we don't have to let those insecure doubts or bad moods take over. Simply, let's try viewing things from a different angle. If it turns out that we really can't play the piano or sing well, then that person is just being honest. If that's the case, it's really more about our own inability to accept constructive criticism than anything else. On the flip side, if we know we can play and sing well, why would we care about the opinion of someone who doesn't understand music and is just spouting nonsense? We're not that really so foolish that we would let the words of someone clueless shake our confidence. But I get it, rising above the harsh words and ignorance of others isn't easy. Sometimes those comments cut deep. But here's another way to tackle those moments. Instead of fixating on what's being said, think about who's saying it and why. Then, we might realize that the person throwing out negativity is struggling with their own issues. Maybe they're feeling envious, unhappy, or frustrated. Unfortunately, some of these hurtful remarks come from people who are emotionally twisted or even malicious. They might be trying to manipulate or hurt others to feel better about themselves. It's crucial to remember that their goal is often to gain something at someone else's expense, even if it means spreading lies that could harm not just one person, but many. Now, let's talk about honesty for a moment. People often demand that others be truthful, but when they catch someone in a lie, they tend to take it personally and get angry. But here's the kicker. Taking every lie personally doesn't serve us. Most of the time, those lies have nothing to do with us. People lie out of fear of being exposed, fear of being seen as flawed or imperfect. Sometimes, they don't even realize they're lying because they've convinced themselves of their own falsehoods. Just because we spot a lie doesn't mean the other person sees it that way. So, in all these situations, it's helpful to adopt a different mindset. We don't need to distrust everyone and live in a state of paranoia. Instead, if we approach life with a positive attitude, we can see others for who they really are without taking overly touchy. When we do this, their words won't sting us. So, rather than fixating on others and the world around us, let's turn our focus inward. We can't change a world filled with lies, hypocrisy, and deceit. We can't transform those who choose to deceive us. But what we can change is our own touchiness. We can stop letting others' words define our worth. This chapter dives into our obsession with the past and the future. In my martial art, there's a strong focus on the present moment. It teaches that dwelling on the past and worrying about the future can actually cloud our minds and hold back our spiritual and mental growth. Let me share a story that illustrates this idea. Imagine dragging a massive boulder behind you. It's a burden that grows heavier with each passing year. When you're young and full of energy, you might manage to carry it, but it takes a toll on you. You spend so much effort hauling that weight around that you miss out on what's happening right here and now. Plus, there's hardly any time to relax. As the years go by, your strength starts to wane, but the boulder just keeps getting heavier. Yet, you keep pulling it, stubbornly and tirelessly. And when it becomes too much to bear, you start searching for ways to lighten the load. You might enlist the help of friends, or try to rig up a wheelbarrow. But no matter what tricks you come up with, you're still dragging that boulder behind you, and it just gets tougher every year. Now, think about the future. Instead of dragging a boulder, you're pushing one in front of you. So very often, people find themselves juggling two boulders at once, one behind and one ahead. What's really striking is how few people consider just letting go of those burdens. They believe these boulders hold some sort of significance in their lives. This belief is reinforced by society, religions, family, friends, social trends, politics, history, schools, and the media. But in reality, these boulders are just heavy weights that slow us down and hold us back. Ultimately, It's our choice, whether we want to keep dragging or pushing those boulders. But my martial art teaches something different. Leave that boulder behind, and move forward, unburdened. Start living in the present, which is the only reality we truly have. The past is already gone, and the future is uncertain, shaped by how we act in this very moment. Many argue that we should keep the future in mind. But I see it differently. How we live right now directly shapes our future. If we waste the present, the future will reflect that neglect. Living in the past only leads to dissatisfaction, frustration, and a range of negative emotions. It's like making excuses for every misfortune and hardship we face. Maybe now you may ask, why is the past not as crucial as we're taught? People tend to look back fondly on their past, reminiscing about the people they've met, the events they've experienced, and the lessons they've learned. While it's nice to reflect, most of the time, we find ourselves clinging to the negative experiences. Those bad memories seep into our present lives, influencing our choices and leading us to make poor decisions when faced with new challenges. The wrong choices can deepen our unpleasant experiences, creating a cycle that traps us in a bleak future. That's why it makes so much sense to stop dragging or pushing that boulder and move forward without the weight. No matter how tough or painful the past has been, it has shaped who we are today. Because of that past, we are where we are now. And what we have right now is the best it can be. Going back and wishing things had been different, those are just lies we tell ourselves. The truth is simple. What we have in the present is the best we can do. Even if our past had unfolded differently, we wouldn't be any better off than we are right now. You know, I've mentioned before that we often waste so much of our thoughts and feelings dwelling on memories from the past. And let's be real, these memories tend to be the negative, unpleasant, or just plain sad ones. It's crucial to understand that these negative memories can really shape our lives, especially when we let the past hold such weight. What I've also pointed out is that many of these memories are tied to specific life events and the people around us. They can create invisible chains that limit who we are and how we live. It's like carrying a backpack full of stones. The heavier it gets, the harder it is to move forward. And honestly, this is pretty miserable. It hurts us more than we realize. So, maybe it would be nice to find a way to lighten that load. One powerful way to do that is through forgiveness, but not in the way that many religions teach. I'm talking about forgiving those past events that still haunt us. The ones we keep blaming ourselves for. We also need to forgive the people from our past whom we've hurt in some way. This act can help us release those deep-seated psychological blocks and traumas that weigh us down. Maybe it looks a bit illogical, but this forgiveness isn't for anyone else. It's for us. It's about freeing ourselves from the grip of our negative past, so we can breathe again. Through that kind of forgiveness, we can loosen that grip around our throats, and finally take a deep, long, refreshing breath. I get it, it's easy to talk about forgiveness, but actually doing it can feel like climbing a mountain. So, let me share a technique that's worked for me. Start by writing down all the negative events in your life, those moments when you feel you've messed up, you did something really bad, or hurt someone. Focus on the ones where you blame yourself the most. Once you have your list, go through each item in your mind. Sincerely apologize, ask for forgiveness, express gratitude to being wronged, and thank for appreciating. Finally, think about all the people who have impacted your life in significant ways. Go through the same process. Apologize sincerely to everyone involved, ask for their forgiveness, and then thank them for the lessons learned. Once you've completed this list, here comes the cathartic part. Burn it or toss it into a river, and watch it drift away. This act is more than just symbolic. It helps release those hidden complexes in your subconscious that you might not even be aware of, yet they still affect your life. But there's one last, and perhaps the toughest task: forgiving ourselves. Forgiving ourselves can feel like trying to navigate a maze blindfolded. When we look back, it's so easy to blame ourselves for our past actions, to wallow in self-pity, and to label ourselves as bad or wrong. This self-criticism often intensifies when our present feels unsatisfactory. In those moments, it's important to remind ourselves that, at the time, we did the best we could with what we had. Just because we can see things more clearly now doesn't mean we were wrong back then. Life is a series of lessons, and we learn as we go. So, when we forgive ourselves for our past mistakes, we can start to shift our patterns of thinking and behavior. This change can transform our entire perception of reality. It's like clearing the fog from our minds, making everything feel a bit lighter and more manageable. Ultimately, this journey of forgiveness can lead us to a happier, more fulfilling life. This chapter is all about giving our all, every single time. Don't hold back, don't ever settle for halfway, and definitely don't push things off until later. Think about it. When we pour our energy into the present moment, and strive to do our best with what we have, we can look back without regrets. We'll know that we gave it everything we had at that time, and that's what truly matters. If things didn't turn out the way we hoped, it's just part of unpredictable life. What's key to remember is that when we genuinely try our best, there's no way to judge that effort later. And if we can't judge it, we shouldn't blame ourselves for any mistakes or missteps. Just like there's no reason to dwell on regrets. This mindset brings us peace and satisfaction, even when life throws us curveballs. It makes sense that our best efforts won't look the same every day. Each moment is unique, and everything around us is always shifting. We're constantly growing and evolving, both physically and mentally. Sometimes we'll wake up feeling like we can conquer the world, while other days we might feel drained or out of sorts. One day we might be happy and full of energy, and the next, we could be feeling low or unwell. But no matter how we feel, the goal is to always give our best in that moment. If we approach every situation like this, even when things don't go our way, we'll feel good about ourselves. We'll recognize that we've taken action, that we've tried to turn our ideas into reality. It doesn't matter if it didn't go perfectly. What matters is that we didn't just sit back and dream, we acted. The same goes for our daily routines and responsibilities. Don't cut corners, don't push things off for later, and don't do anything halfway. Instead, tackle everything with speed, responsibility, and consistency. Because if we want to turn our dreams into reality, we have to take action. It doesn't matter how small the step is, every little effort counts. Big dreams are just ideas, floating in our heads, until we take action. Each small deed carries weight, no matter how insignificant it may seem at the time. Remember, nothing is as simple as it appears. We might stumble, make mistakes, or hesitate. But we need to understand that sometimes things don't go according to plan. When we face setbacks, we should remind ourselves that next time we'll come back stronger, armed with the lessons learned from our failures. With each new experience, we should dive in with even more determination and enthusiasm. It's crucial to keep in mind that we did our best at that moment. If things didn't work out right away, that's perfectly okay. Next time, we'll do better. This chapter dives into something I like to call the lightning rod of negative emotions. Now, when I say lightning rod, I'm talking about a way of communicating where we try to push our own problems, mistakes, worries, and sorrows onto those closest to us, people who often haven't done anything wrong. It's like we're trying to dodge the storm brewing inside us by redirecting the lightning to others. It often comes down to a fear of guilt. We don't want to shoulder the weight of our worries or admit that we've made mistakes. Instead, many of us trick ourselves into believing that our bad mood is someone else's fault, whether it's the people around us, bad luck, or just the way life has turned out. It's easier to point fingers at others than to look in the mirror and acknowledge that we might be the ones holding the reins to our own dissatisfaction. We convince ourselves that if only the people in our lives or our circumstances were different, everything would be sunshine and rainbows. But here's the catch. This approach doesn't lead to lasting happiness. Blaming the world or the people around us doesn't solve anything. Deep down, we know the truth, it's on us. And that realization can spiral us into even darker emotions, like hatred, aggression, and frustration. And that's all, logically, pushing us further away from the joy we seek. So, let's take a moment to reflect. It's crucial to own up to our actions and decisions, to stop casting blame on others. We need to break free from habits of grumpiness, toxic irony, and irritation. These feelings don't truly reflect how others treat us, they mirror what's happening within ourselves. In the end, it's all about understanding that the storm we feel inside can be calmed by taking responsibility and nurturing a more positive outlook. Let's be the change we want to see, rather than the lightning rod that diverts our troubles onto those around us. If we radiate evil, evil will come back to us. If we accept evil, we will become evil. In a figurative sense, this means that if we put negativity out into the world, it's bound to circle back to us. This idea sits at the heart of my martial art philosophy, which offers a powerful lens for understanding ourselves and making choices in the many twists and turns of life. It all boils down to a fundamental principle: action and reaction. Simply put, everything we do sets off a chain of events, and those consequences are never random. They're intricately linked to the original action, like the first domino in a long line, waiting to topple. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The universe doesn't operate on our human timeline. The laws of nature don't care about our schedules or deadlines and perception of reality. So, the effects of our actions might not show up right away. They could take years to manifest, and when they do, they might come in forms we never expected. It's easy to think that our bad actions have slipped through the cracks. But trust me, they're still out there, waiting. Think of it like geometry. Imagine point A representing our action. Now, picture point B as the outcome of that action. If we draw a line connecting these 2 points, it symbolizes the fact that every action has a reaction. Along that line, there could be countless other points, each with its own reactions, not directly tied to the first 2. That line might twist and turn, but eventually, it will lead to point B. This principle is similar to how electricity flows, how phone signals travel, or how the internet sends waves through the air. They all operate on the same fundamental truth. So, don't question why this is the case. It's simply how the world works, and no amount of technology, religious beliefs, political ideologies, or mystical theories can change that. The second part of this core rule of my martial art spirituality might sound a little tricky. He who accepts evil becomes evil. To make it clearer, let's think of it like this. Picture yourself as a tall electric pole, standing strong in a field. Around you are people in positions of power or authorities. Let's call them the power plants. They generate energy, or rather influence, that spreads outwards, creating points A, where their actions begin. Now, following the logic, those actions have consequences. Let's call those points B. If these power plants are doing something negative, then the energy they send out is tainted, and those points B are going to reflect that negativity. Here's the kicker. These powerful individuals often want their actions to reach those points B, no matter the fallout. They might use others, let's say, electric poles, to help spread their influence. These electric poles are usually people who are more easily swayed, or who struggle with their own moral compass. Let me give you a couple of examples to illustrate this. Imagine You work for a boss who's not exactly a saint. He steals from the payroll, cheats on taxes, and plays dirty with other companies. As his trusted employee, you know what's going on, and you've even been dragged into these shady practices more than once. Deep down, you're not okay with it. But you stay quiet, because you're worried about losing your job, and there's a nice paycheck waiting for you. In this scenario, you've become like that electric pole, supporting the negative energy. Now, let's switch gears. Picture a family member who's doing something truly awful, like sexually abusing someone innocent. You can't stand it, but the pressure to stay loyal to your family is overwhelming. Also, you don't want to bring shame upon your family, so you keep your mouth shut and try to cover it up. Again, you're acting like that electric pole, standing by while something terrible happens. In both of these examples, there's a common thread. We're witnessing something bad or evil, and instead of speaking up, we turn a blind eye. We convince ourselves that staying silent is the easier path, and in doing so, we end up supporting that negativity. Here's the harsh truth. Once we become that electric pole, we're tied to that negative energy, and it starts to seep into us. It doesn't matter how good we think we are at heart. What truly matters are our actions. And if those actions are negative, then we can't just brush it off. That's why my martial arts spirituality emphasizes the importance of not tolerating negativity around us. When we spot something wrong, we need to act immediately and without hesitation. Sure, it can put us in tough situations where we might risk our safety, health, or well-being. But remember this old saying: the hero dies but once, while the coward dies 1,000 times. So, let's strive to be heroes in our own lives, standing up against the negativity we encounter.